Alright, so I'm going to now show another example in which we are going to print numbers 0 to 9, and you saw that example a lot in my previous lectures. So similar to the previous example, I'm going to use both while loop and for loop to do the exact same thing. Alright, so first I'm going to do it using a while loop. For while loop, I need the keyword, of course, and then I need to set a condition. So next I need to set the condition, and for the condition I know exactly I'm going to repeat these instructions 10 times, okay? Numbers 0 to 9, that means 10 items. So I'm going to basically create a variable, and I'm going to start from 0 and then use this variable to create an expression, all right? And then inside that while loop I can simply change that variable, and at some point it becomes false, so I exit the while loop, right? So for my condition, I'm going to see as long as num is less than 10, I want you to repeat some instructions, okay? And before I forget, I'm going to put my change my num as I go, okay? So I'm going to say increment the num. Okay, incremented. So at some point num is not less than 10 anymore, and that means this while loop is going to be terminated. Okay, and to see it, I'm going to just simply put the print function. You see what number is that we are getting. So I'm getting value 0 to 9 for this. Okay, if you make a mistake, for instance, instead of adding 1 to your num, subtract from it, then you're going to get an infinite loop, because instead of going up, you're going down, and your num is going to be always less than 10. Okay, so that's the example of infinite loop. To stop it, I'm in a Windows machine, I'm going to do control program. So I'm going to fix it, put plus, and if I run it now, I'm going to get 0 to 9. Okay, so this part will help this condition, this expression, to change over time. Okay, so at some point it's going to be changed from true to false. Okay, and that happens after you print 10 items, right? Items 0 to 9. All right, so that is when we have a while loop, when we want to use a while loop. And again, with whatever problem you have, you can use a while loop. But sometimes having a for loop is much easier. It becomes much simpler to write a piece of code to print something, or to do some operation with the items that you have. All right, so now let's try this exact same thing using a for loop. Okay, so I'm going to comment these 4 lines and use a for loop to do the similar thing. In this example, so far I do not have any sequence, okay? If I had a sequence, it would have been very equal to this tuple, and then I could have simply said for I, which is the name of variable that I just created, in the sequence that I have, print this variable I. So if I do that, I'm going to get the exact same output as compared to the one that we had using while loop. But what happens if you don't have that sequence? Okay, I do not have the sequence, and I know I just want to print numbers 0 to 9. Okay, in Python there is a function that is called range that helps you, that goes hand to hand with for, that helps you to create some numbers on the fly. All right, so now let's go and practice the range function. All right, so that means in this example we don't have a sequence anymore. So how we can replace it with something else? For this lecture we also have a co-instructor. Okay, my son is going to help me to teach you this topic. Okay, our co-instructor just left. All right, so we are going to continue. So for this part, since we don't have a sequence anymore, but we know exactly what numbers we are going to create, we can use this range function, which is quite handy, okay? So you're simply saying, very similar to the previous one, this part is going to be exactly the same. So you're creating a variable in But instead of having a sequence, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go with a range function. So for this range function, you can say what number it starts from and how far you want to go. Okay, I want to start from from number 0, and I want to go to 9. All right, so if I run this, I'm going to get numbers 0 to 8 instead of 9. So let's run it and see. Okay, you see it starts from 0, exactly from the number that you said to start it with, and it goes all the way to 8 because range function doesn't include the end value. So if you want to go to 9, you should say, okay, 0 to 10. That means include 0, exclude the last value. So now if I run it, it goes all the way from 0 to 9. Okay, so let me just make it bigger so you see all of the values. Okay, so that is the range function. If I want to go to 20, it simply does that. It goes 0 to 19. All right, so it does not include the last item. If I want to see 20 as well, I need to say 0 to, for instance, 21. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. So for instance, if you want to see like numbers 0 to 4, you can say 0 to 5, which exclude 5, include 0. All right, so if I run it now, I get 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'm going to create another video to go into detail of how range function works, but this is just a very simple example of the range function. All right, I see you in the next video.